start the second episode of the Feed the Narrative podcast. I've got a great friend with me today. I first learned her by watching the local news. Her name that she went by then was Angela Kim. Now we call her Angela Poffenbaugh, as she has made the transition from media to the PR side. A very popular transition. But Angela worked with my brother at the local NBC affiliate here in Chattanooga, had a huge fan base, and then, of course, saddened a lot of people by leaving the media space and moving into public relations. And it's been really fun to watch her career progress in that direction. She actually sat in on the first cohort of Feed the Narrative, and so thank you, Angela, for that. But yeah, Angela, tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, and your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, first off, hi David. Thank you for such an incredible introduction. And so glad that we were able to become friends through your brother and
Uh-huh.
the Mox. Go Mox. But a little bit about myself. So, like you said, I used to work in news, and a lot of journalists, I think, will relate to this. When you grow up and you think about what do I want to do when I'm older? What do I want to be? It is so cool to watch, whether it's the morning news, the evening news, and just see the storytelling, the very honest
Yeah.
storytelling that goes on, and think, I want to do that one day. And that was my path, as I grew up every morning watching Good Morning America, and I thought one day I want to be the next Robin Roberts or George Stephanopoulos. They're
Yeah.
incredible. And so, from day one, as soon as I was in high school and at the point when I could start getting internships, I was writing for newspapers. I was trying to learn more about my local television stations. Then I went to Ithaca College up in New York and studied journalism. Worked in broadcast TV, first in Wisconsin for 2 years as a morning anchor, and then down here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with David's brother, John, for about 2.5 years in morning news as well. But then I hit a point where essentially a morning shift, David, is really hard, especially when it's like
Yeah.
2 a.m. to noon every day. And on top of that, many people probably know this, news does not pay the best in the world. So was working a second job on top of that, and eventually hit a point to where I thought, this is so much fun, but I just don't think it's sustainable for the long run. And then I made the switch into PR, and I do a mix of marketing, public relations, communications, events, and all that jazz. And that's how
Yeah.
I got here.
Yeah. So you actually fit a few of the categories of the people I like to talk with on the podcast. You transition from media to PR, but then also now in your position, you wear about 30 different hats,
Yeah.
communicator hats on any given day. So, but you're doing it. Yeah, from my vantage point, you're doing an incredible job. So I feel like that's like a trademark of somebody who does it well. Is it looks like you got a well-oiled machine over there. Yeah. Well, before I get to my first question, I didn't know that you were in Wisconsin. Where were you in Wisconsin?
I was up in like the Wausau Rhinelander area. It's called
What?
Woods. Yeah, yeah.
So we have not talked about. I used to go to summer camp in Three Lakes, Wisconsin. I flew in and out of Rhinelander, and like I remember, like one of the only radio stations we could get was the country station from Wausau.
Yeah,
And so I am sort of, I guess, familiar with the media landscape up there, but it's beautiful country in the summer. In the
oh,
summer,
yeah. And it was a great starter market as a journalist because it wasn't too big. So, one, you could fail safely and make
mm,
mistakes. You have a pretty supportive community.
yeah,
The cost of living up there was not bad at all. I think I
sure.
had a one bedroom, one bathroom for 575 a month with a washer dryer, and it was on a private lake. And my mom
Wow.
looked at me and said, "You will never live this cheaply ever. Just know
She's
that."
right. She's right.
But yeah, beautiful area, amazing lakes up there. Still
Yeah,
go regularly to visit. It's
yeah.
awesome.
I always tell people about Wisconsin in the summers, and of course in the South, people are like, Wisconsin in the summers? What are you even talking about? And I'm like, no, trust me, it's the best.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so the first question that I wanted to ask you about the transition is that, obviously in the PR world, there are a lot of former journalists over here. The joke phrase that Natalie and I always use is they hate us till they are us uh, on the PR side. But I feel like there are obviously, because of such a huge component of public relations is favorable earned media. There is, I would imagine, when somebody migrates from media to PR, it's easy to think probably first about like scoring stories on
Right.
the media side, back where I just came from. And I know that's true, but what are from your story, what are some things that you may not have thought about, or some nuances to your job now that maybe you didn't or you weren't aware of before you jumped from media to PR?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, David. And I think one big thing in PR that is an adjustment for a lot of journalists is strategy. And I don't just mean, oh, I'm going to write this press release and send it out at this time and be strategic that way. What I more so mean is thought leadership strategy of
Mm,
being able to make a multi leveled, multi layered PR plan of saying, individually for my CEO, I want her to be portrayed for her kindness or for how well she treats the company or things like that. But on a company level, I want us to be start being recognized for these kinds of things and working our way up from small organizations to bigger organizations. I think when I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like when journalists hop into it, they go, I know how to write a press release. I know how
yeah,
to do a good story. I know how to do that. Great. That's all very short term, in my opinion. And I think you can create longer term strategy of every story can lead up to this kind of general theme. And there's the whole joke of no PR is bad PR, but a lot of good PR can go a really long way with making
yeah.
your company stand out from other competitors.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that, obviously didn't come from the media side. I'm very fortunate that I've kind of dabbled. I used to write a weekly column for the local paper, and of course, my brother is a news anchor. So, I've kind of been able to peek around the curtain a little bit and gain an appreciation for what goes on that side. But I did. That's not my trajectory. That's not how I came up in the PR space. But I think it's common, whether you come from the media or you're a different communicator as a professional and you come into PR, like you're not aware of all the different constituent parts of a well-oiled strategic public relations plan. Like I had never thought about thought leadership. I was aware of awards. I didn't know what went into getting awards. I didn't know what awards made the most sense for the organizations that I was working in, and building all that out and saying like, this is what we're trying to achieve. Here are all the things we're going to try to harness to get there. And then map that out on a calendar. Like
Right.
it's a lot. It's a ton. Um, what is so? How long has it been since you left the media lands? 2 years? 3 years?
2 years now. Yeah.
Wow, it's
Feels like much
flown.
longer.
Yeah, it's like I was about to say. It feels like it was just yesterday, but then also I feel like you've been doing this for quite a while now.
Yeah.
So 2 years, that's enough time for you to like probably feel like you've got your feet under you pretty well. What has been your favorite thing or things about making the jump from media to PR? What do you like the most about being a PR pro now?
Well, on a personal level, I love having a normal sleep schedule. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
My brain just operates so much better.
right.
But now, on a PR level, honestly, I feel like once I read your book, I felt like I was really able to step into feeling confident about pitching PR strategies.
Oh,
Before it
nice.
was a lot of, I'm taking a stab at it. Hopefully, my boss will like it. Like, I know where my experience comes from because I worked in the news, but they don't really fully understand. And I think that's the big thing, too, is unless your boss has worked as a journalist in the past, they're not going to fully understand off the bat how versatile you are, how quick with deadlines you are, how fast you can adapt to things, and also just how you have such a gut reaction and innate built-in sense for what's a good story. You
Yeah,
have to really earn that trust with your boss. But once I think I started to learn about all of your strategies through Feed the Narrative, my favorite part of PR became being able to say, hey, like, go with me on this one. This angle is going to like make such a big difference for coverage, whether that is on an individual level with, so we support startup founders with the startup founders that we do PR for, or on a company wide level. And it's fun to almost get those reactions from your boss when you have this confidence, when it works out and they say, oh, that's incredible. I never would have thought of that. So
Yeah.
it's like those little wins that make it really fun.
Oh, absolutely. That is super encouraging to hear. And yeah, it is fun when you actually kind of like map these strategies out, and by golly, they start actually working. Because it is, I feel like, I'm on the agency side now. I started internally as a PR guy. And when my job literally moved away, that's when my wife, Natalie, and I started Heed PR. And for us, like when you're an internal PR person, your boss is kind of extending you a trust line of credit, and you need to make good on that. And once you do, they're like, "Yes, this is great." Like on the agency side, not only are they giving you your trust, but they're also giving you their money month after month. And so like there's this added huge variable there. But once it starts delivering, and it starts moving their business forward, they're like, oh, this is a great investment. It's gone from a gamble to an investment, and it's exciting to see. When they start asking to do more, that's like
Yes.
that's a super fun thing.
Yeah, they're
Um,
speaking my love language. Let's do
yeah,
it.
let's go. Okay, so we talked about uh, with the transition from media to PR and things you kind of learned once you got in the PR seat that you weren't aware of. From your vantage point now, tell us, kind of like going the other way, what are the typical things that communications people are missing out on, or that they could get stronger at when
Mm.
they think about their engagement with members of the media?
I think it's just having those personal relationships, right?
Mm,
I think unless you've worked in the news, you may not realize that when you're a journalist, I legitimately, David, had hundreds of emails in my inbox every single day. And when you've been working a job, whether it's at 3 a.m. in the morning, 11 p.m. at night, or halfway through the day, you have daily deadlines back to back to back. You really never have a break. You can't have a slow day and kind of refresh because every day is a new story.
yeah.
Some people can dive into that passion, but at one point or another, people do get a little tired. And so when I'm in that mindset of I'm really tired, I have 200 emails in my inbox, it's literally just delete, 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 delete. And what would make me stop is when these were personal pitches to me. They weren't
Mm,
pitches to my news desk as a whole. They weren't things like that, but they were saying, hey, Angela, I see you cover these kinds of stories. I think you would really like this. Or, Angela, loved your live segment on the morning news the other day. I think this would be a really fun visual piece for you to do as a morning live segment. Then I said, okay, you're speaking my language and you clearly did your research. Let me look into this. It makes a really big difference, even though it's just a few extra minutes of looking into who that person is.
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, in this line of work, you're going to have to reach out to people for the first time, like, hey, here's this thing. But any work that a PR professional can do to actually build a relationship, I'm not saying be BFFs with people,
Yeah.
but actually establish a human relationship with target members of the media. It's huge, and actually pay attention. Like I am blown away by so many business owners, founders who like don't really even consume that much media themselves, and
Mm-mm.
then just want to cold pitch into people and think they're going to have like massive amounts of success. You got to consume that information. You got to watch the media yourself and figure out who is reporting on stories that I can fit into or that makes sense. And then actually like reach out to those people in a very human way. I love reaching out to people without even needing anything for a while. Like I did that when I was at Bellhops, the moving company. Like I put together a massive media list, and I just reached out to people and I was like, hey, I'm not pitching you right now. My name's David. I'm going to be back in your inbox at some point. I love reading your stuff. Here's where I'm the new director of communications at. Here's what we do. I'll be back. Just kind of one of those, like, I have nothing to ask right now.
Mhm.
And it turned out to be, I guess it was a strategy, being I guess, a nice person.
Well, because on the other end of that too, I've had people that were just so pushy, and they said,
Yeah.
"Hey, do you want to do a story in this? Hey, you haven't gotten back to me. Do you want to do a story in this?" And I get it, like you're trying to check boxes at your job and hit your goals and everything.
Hmm.
But when I'm in the middle of, interviewing the mayor or attending a city council meeting, and I keep seeing someone blow up on my phone being like, "Hey, can I please have a story done about me?" It doesn't irk you per se, but I don't know, it does
It
kind of give
doesn't,
you a kick.
it
You know what
doesn't land, it doesn't land well.
No,
And
yeah.
no, no, not at all.
But I would add to that, though, that what I did appreciate, another thing that I think a lot of communicators may not realize, is I really appreciated having those go to people. So a
Mm,
lot of times journalists will have stories fall through, and it's just you're on a deadline crunch. Like, no matter what happens, when your story falls through at 1 p.m., you still got to make it for the 5 p.m. newscast. So I really appreciated having those people that I could just text and go, hey, you know what the deal is. My
yeah,
story fell through. Can you help me? And
yeah.
that person is able to understand, one, what kind of stories your station is looking for, two, can respond promptly and say, girl, I got you, and send it. And then you kind of almost do them a favor down the road when they say, hey, I have this story, and you go, oh, of course, because it's a good relationship right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. When Natalie was the PR director at a development company, they were always in the news, and it was because she was always top of mind
Mm-hmm.
with the reporters who covered that stuff. And a lot of times it was just like one, they didn't know who else to reach out to, or two, something fell through, and they're like, well, Natalie and her business are always good to go. So we're going to, call them in from the bullpen. And it
Yeah.
worked. It worked a
And
bunch.
you gain that reputation of it takes 3 hours for you to respond to somebody. Like in the normal human world, it's fine. Like I get it. People take days to respond. In the news world, that's like 5 weeks in their brain.
Yeah.
So
And that's what I always tell people too. Like maybe even in the newspaper world, that's like a print publication or like an actual written media. But if you're dealing with TV news, like you want to have a spot on TV news, or you want to work your way into something, like you got to be ready to go. I remember, and I wrote about in the book, I never sat in on a news meeting. And Callie over at Local 3, um, I reached out, kind of leveraging my relationship with my brother. Callie's the news director over there for people who aren't aware.
a
Uh,
great.
yeah, and or now she runs the place. But I said, can I just bring my team over and just sit in on a morning news meeting? And it was the first time any of us had actually gone in and sat in on one. And it was at like 8 or 9 in the morning, and it was slam bam, like whoo, 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 and everybody's out the door, hair on fire, and we were like, that's how it's done.
Yep.
Okay, so that and they got to go out, they got to source this thing, they got to get to somewhere where they can get a visual shot, they got to do the interview, they got to get back and do b-roll, they got to put it all together, and it's got to be ready to go at 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm like,
Yeah. And I would add to that too of, I think it's good to level set your boss's expectations
yeah,
because, your boss may say, hey, I want to have a press conference at this time at this day. In broadcast, if your press conference is past 2 p.m., they're probably not going to go because, again, they have a
no,
5 p.m. newscast. And just as a PR professional, being aware of everything else happening. For example, if you're trying to get a local broadcast company to come cover you, see what else is happening in the communities. What might be taking up this journalist's time or the station's time, and then being able to adapt and adjust, I think, is also really appreciated on their end since their hair is always on fire.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How long did it take you to like feel you were like feel comfortable making that transition from media to PR? So you've been there 2 years. When did you start feeling a little comfortable?
Um, that's kind of a multi-layered question. I think when it
Okay.
came to broadcast pitches, I was comfortable off the bat because I had done broadcast so long and had, experience. I knew people back at my old station because I'm in the same market that I was in. That was a little easier. But when your boss comes to you and says, I want to get national coverage, I want to be in the New York Times, I want to be in the Wall Street Journal, that was honestly, it's still a work in progress because you just need your boss to give you time, trust, and opportunities to build relationships. And I think it's hard when you go into it, again, a promo, without reading your book, of saying, okay, like I'll make it happen. I'll go, go, go. I'll pitch, 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 because you feel that sense of urgency, right? But it's a long game. It's a
Yeah.
relationship building game, and you have to almost do your research first and study what that person writes about for a while and build that relationship. And getting into that level of comfort, it takes time, because when you come from a journalist background, you're trained to be, you want this done, I'll have it done by the end of the day. And you have to almost level set your own expectations and not stress yourself out, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you reach out to members of the media, do you drop that like, yo, I used to be one of you. Like I'm not one of those PR people. I understand like do you drop that at all, or is it you're PR Angela?
Yeah, it depends on the place. If it's a
Yeah.
Chattanooga or a Tennessee based organization, totally drop it. Oh, you might remember me as Angela Kim. Oh, name drop. But I feel like there's so many people transitioning out of journalism now that line, that shtick, almost doesn't work all the time.
Interesting.
Because so many people use that line, and I got that when I was in broadcast.
Mm.
And it works depending on the approach, I think. If you're able to say, like, hey, I get it. I've been in your shoes. If you're ever in a jiffy and you need a story, let me know. But when you say, hey, I've been there before and this is why I have a great story for you, then it's kind of, you're hitting that cheese ball level a little.
Sure. Yeah. 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 So when appropriate and do it appropriately. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All right. So one last question. Thinking about, hopefully people will watch this who are like standing on the ledge about to make that jump, kind of like you did. Thinking back to yourself 2 years and change ago as you were there, what advice, one or two pieces of advice, would you give to Angela Kim, soon to be a third name I'm going to have to memorize
Uh-huh.
on that
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you tell those people, or what would you tell yourself in that position about what they need to be ready for?
Yeah, I would say it's so easy to get used to having a lifestyle and mindset of being go, 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 get it done within one day, fast, fast, fast. And it's important to remember that if you do that for 10 years straight, it's not sustainable.
Mm,
So when a boss comes to you and says, hey, can I get this? Don't say, I'll have it done for you by the end of the day, because that's a journalistic habit, right? But say, when do you need it by? I can get
mm,
it to you by whatever your deadline is. Because I've seen a lot of journalists kind of tie themselves into knots where they go in to make a really good impression, but then their boss expects that 24/7 and they can't get out of it. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing I'd recommend is read David's book or take his cohort course. Just because, too, even when you go into job interviews and people say, what is your PR experience? Yes, you can talk about news a gazillion times, but again, the turnover rate from news to PR is getting higher and higher every day in today's modern age. So I really think that if someone came to me when I'm in a manager role and said, hey, I'm a former journalist, also, I've taken the time to understand PR
mm.
strategy and understand all these extra things that you don't get from a base level of being a journalist. I think that would really make a big difference and move the needle for me there too. Um, and then I think the final thing is just to give yourself grace and patience. It
Yeah,
was really hard for me personally and mentally to, my whole life think I was going to do one thing, which was be a journalist, and then take a pivot when I said, okay, I can either prioritize my job or my family and my relationships and my friends, and I had to make a choice there. So it's weird to kind of say, oh, I've built my whole identity around especially being on TV and being a public local figure and people recognizing you in public. It's weird to make that jump. So give yourself grace and patience and remember that there are still ways to make a difference in your community, whether that's volunteering, being on boards, helping nonprofits, like emceeing their events or things like that.
yeah.
So those would be my three big tips for people coming into the PR world.
Well,
from you.
those are awesome. And though I'm sad I don't get to see you every morning on the news anymore, I'm very glad that I get to call you a professional peer now, and somebody that I can point to as a great example of people that do it well in our profession. So thank you so much for
Oh, thank you.
joining me on this, and thank you for being our second guest on Feed the Narrative podcast.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Um,
thank you for having me. And I hope any journalist listening to this really does do this cohort because again, it makes such a big difference in getting past that imposter syndrome of yes, I kind of know news, I kind of know PR, and just giving you that confidence you need to do your job and ascend into leadership roles. So I
Sweet.
appreciate you, David, and Natalie, if she's listening.
She's over. She'll be editing this, so she'll get to hear that at some point.
Great.
All right. Well, take care. I'll see you soon. I always do.
Bye.
See ya.